In this video, we're going to be modeling a cup and a straw. As you can see on the screen, in Krita, I've already gone ahead and made a texture for our cup. Um, how you make the texture is up to you. However, in this video, what I want to do is start with the texture pre-existing before we start the modeling process, and then show you how to work fitting the model to fit a texture that's pre-existing. All right, so this is our texture right here. I've already saved it as a JPEG. I believe I have. Let me just double check to make sure. I'm going to click File, Save As. And yeah, there it is as JPEG right there. Nope, that's not a JPEG. Sorry. So JPEG, cup texture, and that's just in my pictures folder. We'll leave it there for the moment. I'm just going to hit OK. Actually, quality I'm going to bring up to 100% and then hit OK. So now moving over to 3ds Max, this is our die scene right here. Well, the scene with our dice. And we're going to add our cup to this scene. Before we do that, let's do some organization and some cleanup. So this is our scene explorer over here. You can see I am in layer mode right now. And what I want to do is right click down here. I'm going to click on create layer. And this layer I am going to call dice. I just clicked on it twice in order to be able to edit the name. Alternatively, I could have just, with it selected, I could have right-clicked and then selected rename. Now I'm going to take my D6, both of them. I held down Control so I could select both of them, and just drag and drop it right on top of the word dice, and you'll see that it's changed it from my default layer to my dice layer. Now clicking on dice, I'm going to right-click again and then click create layer again. And that's going to create a child layer for me. And then I'm just going to call this reference geometry. Or RefGeo for short, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to misspell both words. So selecting the first geosphere, holding down Shift, and then clicking the last one, that's going to select every single object in between those 2 points. Now if I drag and drop that onto my reference geometry layer, I can click this arrow next to the eyeball, and all those spheres are still there. They're just not taking up my Scene Explorer retail space. Sorry, having a little bit of trouble thinking of how to say that. Probably wasn't the best way still, but good enough. All right, so now I'm going to collapse the dice layer there, and then I'm going to hit the eyeball, and now both dice are gone. If I want to bring them back into view, I can just click the eyeball again, just toggle them on and off like that. So right-clicking again, I'm going to create a new layer, and this layer I am going to call my cup layer. So now with this layer selected, we're going to begin creating the basic geometry of our cup. On the top view here, we want to be working in this viewport to start with. I'm going to select cylinder. I'm going to trace this out like that, then go up. Radius and height, for the moment, we're not going to, when you first create the cylinder, we're not going to worry too much about the values. Instead, we're going to go over to the modifier tab, and then we're going to put in some type-in values. I'm going to go with 10 for the radius and 65 for the height. And for the height segments, I'm going to drop that down to 2. You know what? Let's try 15 for the radius and 65 for the height, because that ratio looks a little bit more right for a tall cup that you'd get from a fast food joint or something like that. Alright, so cap segments I'm going to leave at 1. The sides, I'm just going to go ahead and increase that to 36. We don't really need to increase it, but I just want to go ahead and do that to ensure that we get a nice smooth look all around. From there, I'm going to duplicate this cylinder. So let's expand that there. So right click on it, click clone, copy, then OK. And I'm going to drop the height segments down to 1. We could have just, drawn the cylinder in, but yeah. Selecting both of these, I'm going to set my X, Y, and Z to 0 for the positioning. So those are both now in the center of the scene. Cylinder 1 is going to be our reference, going to be our original object, the mesh that we're creating all the other meshes, creating the final mesh from. Cylinder 2 is going to be a reference for our Boolean operator, or compound object. Wow. So I'm going to drag this up a little bit. I'm going to change the radius to, let's go with 14.5. Oops. It's kind of a thin wall there. Let's just go for straight 14. Because in a later thing, I want to show you how to do something, and it may require the thicker wall in order to prevent stuff from breaking. All right, as far as how far we raise it, I'm just going to put down 3.5, but this is going to be a what you feel like thing. Because what's going to happen down here is on a lot of your restaurant cups, you'll notice that there's this little tiny pocket on the underside of the cup. We've raised this up so that we can not only have the floor of the cup here, but also the pocket underneath it. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Create New Objects, and I'm going to go to the Extended Primitives and select camphor cylinder. I'm going to draw it out like this. And just click a few times to confirm the creation. I'm going to drag it up so that the base is, let's see, I want the middle of it right about the top of the first cylinder. I'm going to click over here and I'm going to bring my radius up to 15. Might increase that. Sides to 36. I'm going to drop our height down considerably because we want more of a rounded object here. Fillet segments, let's increase that up to, let's say 6. And just drag the fillet up as high as you can. And I'm going to move the position for the X and the Y to 0 and 0. And I can see right now that I need to increase my radius a bit. So this object right here that I just added in, again, if you've gone to a restaurant and you've gotten a paper cup from them, even some of the plastic cups, you're going to notice that there's this little kind of rolled over area right at the top. We're just creating that little tiny bit of a bulge there with this object. So drag this up. May have gone too far with the radius. There we go. So there's our 3 objects. And I know that there's usually a bit of a slant here as far as the shape of the cup because it's more of a cone with a blunted end. Again, we're going to fix that. So select the first cylinder that we created. Then go to the Compound Objects list, which is in the Create New Objects tab. And we're going to select Boolean. I'm just going to scroll down a little bit, and I'm going to click Add Operands. And this is very important. You want to select the part that's going to create the brim first, and then select the part that's going to be cutting out the innard of the cup. So the reason why we're doing that is when we do our operands here, it's going to go in order of what we've selected in determining what the final shape is going to look like. So if cylinder 2 selected, I'm going to change that to subtract. And at the moment, we've got our hollowed out cylinder with the little brim going on right there. We don't have anything going on down at the bottom yet. We're going to do that in a different method. But I just want to show you real quick. One of the nice things about this setup here is if I were to click this eyeball here, it will show the various steps of what everything looks like. So if we never added this camphor cylinder here to our list, it would have hollowed out the cup. If we never added the cylinder here for the subtraction, it would have just added the brim there, right? Now, if I have that selected and I drag this above the camphor cylinder, you'll notice it looks like it did when we just had the base cylinder and the camphor cylinder to get added on. But if you pay attention to the inside here, you can see where the cup has actually been hollowed out. It's just because the camphor cylinder is at the bottom of the stack, it's going to show up last and, be added in last, and because it was added in after the cutting was done, it never had a hole cut out of it. So I'm going to drag that back up. There we go. And deselect Add Operands before I break stuff by selecting the wrong thing. Alright, so from there, I'm going to go to the Modify tab and add an Edit Poly modifier. With the Edit Poly modifier added, I'm going to zoom out here a bit, grab vertex selection, grab these vertices here, and I'm just going to drag these down to right about where the base of the cup is. I'll have it offset just a little bit so I can see the other bits easily. There we go. After I've done that, I got to looking at my texture, and this really is kind of a short bit right there. So instead of a tall cup, I'm just going to go ahead and drag this down a bit. So that's probably going to be a little bit closer to what we need. And then from there, I'm going to grab my scaling tool. And then on this top view here, I'm just going to scale it on the X and Y just out a bit so that we've got that little bit of a slant there that our paper cups almost always have. Deselecting vertex selection. I'm going to rotate around to the bottom, grab polygon selection, click there, and then I'm going to do bevel. So there's a couple of steps I'm going to do here. The first one is I'm just going to define the wall of the base area of the cup. And to do that, I'm just going to take my outline, I'm going to drag it down a little bit. Now once I start dragging down, it becomes difficult to see where the outline is, right? So just so I can see it, I'm just going to change the height for the moment. Now I can see where the outline is. So I'm going to line up the tip of this red here with the tip of the wall there. Once I've got it where I want it, I'm going to set my height back to 0. So it's a little hard to tell from this viewport here, but on this viewport right here, you can see that it's not digging into the cup anymore. It's just nice and flat with the wall defined where it's going to be. If I hit the plus button, I'm going to change my outline to 0. And then I'm going to just kind of, well, let's go to this viewport over here. I'm just going to drag my height lower. And I say height lower, it's going to a negative number. However, because the face of this polygon is pointing downward, relative to the face of the polygon, lower is actually up. So just something to keep in mind. This positive negative value isn't going to be positive negative value on the axis. It's only going to be positive negative value compared to which way things are facing. All right, so now we got that little area there done. So I'm going to hit the checkbox. But now the underside here has this unsmoothed area here. So I'm going to do a selection straight across there. I'm going to scroll down to my smoothing groups, and I'm just going to click 4. So now it's smoothed there, outside still smoothed, and it's not smoothing based on the brim or the base of the cup. All right. These smoothing groups here, I'm not entirely happy with the way they're looking. So I'm just going to play around with this for a moment by dragging along like that. Let's see. I'm going to turn off the 5th smoothing group. And that really didn't do anything that I wanted to have happen. Yeah. All right, so we'll just go ahead and leave it as is. Up next, we are going to turn off polygon selection. Yes, yes, no. Before we turn off polygon selection, let's take a look at our cup here. I want to texture the outside of the cup first. And if I scroll down here, we see optional calling. Calling is just, to exclude or to remove from a selection group. So if I select backface calling, and then I drag a selection group like that, all of the polygons where the face of it is facing the perspective of the viewport here is going to be selected. However, if I rotate around, you'll see that the ones that were facing away from the perspective are not selected. Look inside the cup, the same thing's going on. The ones that were facing the perspective are selected there, the ones facing away are not. It's a nice option. However, in this particular instance, I'd actually rather use occluded. So if I select occluded, and then draw a box like that, all of these polygons are selected, backside's not selected, and when I look inside the cup, nothing inside the cup is selected, and nothing along the inside of the bottom is selected either. So what occlusion is going to do is it will only select what you can see. If you can't see it, it won't be included in the selection group. So I'm going to rotate around like this, hold down Control, do a box selection like that. Rotate around, hold down Control, and box selection like that. Now I know I just said if it's occlusion is checked, and if occlusion is checked, then you can't include stuff that you can't see. But it's adding it to the current selection group, which is why none of the stuff that I couldn't see was being deselected. So there's the outside of our cup selected. I'm going to turn that back off. I'm going to add an unwrap UVW mod. I'm going to add a UVW map first. UVW map is just a nice little tool to quickly map the UVWs of our object selection based off of one of these different projection types. Now a cup is a cylinder, so cylindrical is the easy go-to for our projection type here. So I click on that and you see that what was formerly just a orange plane becomes a cylindrical one. If I scroll around this way, you see it just goes all the way around there. Whoops, did not mean to deselect. I'm going to scroll down here. And down here we have alignment. We'll show you fit in just a moment. X, Y, and Z will let us change the alignment of the cylinder if for some reason the alignment isn't the proper way. I'm going to expand this out right here and select the gizmo. And I'm just going to scale it down right here. You can see our projection has been scaled down on the Z-axis. If I leave it like this, then everything along the Z-axis is going to become tiled based off of the height of this. So this would end up with 3 tiles of our texture going up, roundabout. Now I don't want it doing that, so I'm just going to click the word fit here. And what that does is it's going to do its best job to fit the entire thing into a singular projection area. And if I spin around, there it is. So there is a green line right here. This green line represents the seam line. So when I go to the Unwrap UVW modifier, wherever that green line is, that's going to indicate where the split is. So this entire cylinder is going to be laid out flat, just like a rectangle, with the seam line being the right and left side of it. So now I'm going to go ahead and go to Unwrap UVW. I'm going to scroll down here and show you something else. Right here is the projection modifiers here. You can do basically the same thing that we did with the UVW map here. I just prefer to add the UVW map first and then go to Unwrap UVW because it's a little bit easier to control the projection from this modifier. So now if I click Open UV Editor, here is our outside of our cup. I'm just going to click and drag this right over here so it's out of the way. Then I'm going to come over here and add another Edit Poly modifier. Alright, so if the new Edit Poly modifier is added, I'm going to select by polygon again. I'm going to rotate around. And once again, I'm going to turn on Occluded. I'm just going to draw a box like that. Like that. And then I'm going to hold down Control and click Alt and click right there. And that's going to deselect our base, but just have the inside, just have the inside wall of the cup selected. Now if I angle it this way, it's a little different here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Control. I'm going to draw my line straight across like this, right? Still have occlusion selected, but because I did it on this viewport where I can see through everything, that means both sides were selected. So remember, when you do occluded for the optional calling, make sure you're in perspective view or at least not in wireframe mode. So now I'm going to rotate my camera just like this. And then I'm going to hold down Alt, still occlusion selected, draw my box around, rotate around, draw like that, rotate around, holding Alt again. There we go. So because I have occlusion selected, and I made sure that none of this was visible as I held down Alt to deselect parts of the mesh, the entire ring there is still selected, and the same for the inside of the cup. So once again, we're going to add an UVW map modifier. I'm going to go to cylindrical, make sure to hit fit, and then unwrap UVW map. Unwrap UVW. Click Open UV Editor, and we're just going to drag this off to the side as well. Again, generally speaking, you want your entire texture map to be in this checkered patterned area right here. The reason I'm dragging it off to the side is just organizational, so that once we have everything grouped the way we want them, we can move them to where we want them to be. All right. So I'm going to close that and add another Edit Poly modifier. With polygon selection here, I'm going to do a box, I'm going to do a box selection like that, hold down Alt, and then box select like that, and you can faintly see the red line right there. And what that did was it allowed me to select the very bottom of the brim there. After that, I'm going to zoom out. Then I'm going to hold down Control, do a box selection right across the top there so I can get that top part of the brim. Hold down Alt, then box selection across so that I deselect everything but the top brim and bottom brim. Then I'm going to go to Unwrap UVW. Open my editor. And I've got some weird artifacting going on here. All right, so let's change this to LSCM. Click this middle thing here. Reset. Click it again and again. Not sure what's going on with these polygons there because they're all coming to a singular point. If I do vertex selection and I highlight that point, I'm just going to drag it to right there. And according to this, that vertex should be right here. Because if I move this over this way, oh, no, I'm wrong. Okay. So where is that vertex? No, that's right. So with the vertex selected, it's showing it should be right there, but you can see that there's no actual vertex there, so it's a little confusing. So I'm just going to go ahead and box select, well, turn on element selection, and then polygon selection, drag those off to the side. All right, moving forward. So edit poly, and this time I am just going to go straight to unwrap UVW, open UV editor, and right now everything is on the template here, but if you'll notice, if I select the bottom of the cup, we just got a straight line going across. We don't really want that, so I'm going to do a box selection like that, and that will select not only the bottom of the cup, but also the inside of the base. So now if I do my peels, whoops, did not mean for everything to do that. However, I mean, that actually peeled quite nicely. We didn't have to do all these other steps. That doesn't always work like that, just for the record. So element selection, if I click right here, that's the inside of the cup. If I click right here, that's the outside. Click right there, that's the inside of the bottom brim. That is part of the top brim, I believe. Nope, bottom brim still. That's the top brim. So if I just select that one, that's... If I just select that one polygon there, and I look around here, it just doesn't show anything. Oh well. I am not going to obsess about that. A little bit of a lie there, but you know. Next thing I'm going to do is on my checker pattern pull down right here. Oh, texture selection. I'm going to change what this checker pattern looks like to be the texture that we are working with. So if I select pick texture, select bitmap, and then find my image, which is this one right here, click open. There is my texture there. So element selection, I'm going to move some of this stuff out of the way again. Whoops. Let's turn that off. There we go. Whoops. Come on. And this is our outside of the cup. Let's go ahead and scale this on the vertical axis first. It's just clicking and dragging like that. And then we're going to scale it on the horizontal axis. Again, we can use a freeform tool if we wanted to. Which again, the freeform tool is this one right here. If I click on that, I can just click and drag one of the corners along. So then that part's in place. Next up, let's place the base of the cups. Whoops. So I select these two. I'm going to scale them down. If I hold shift, it'll, well, no, it won't. Let's go for that size right there. Positioning them like that. Then we're going to grab this piece right here. Because it's that brim area, I'm going to go ahead and scale it up a bit. I'm going to place it there. This one right here. I'm going to say that's going to be a good spot to put it after I scale it down. Because again, this is going to be one of those parts of the cup that's not really going to be seen by anybody except for very particular circumstances. I'm going to move this right over top of this piece over here. Select both of them. Positioning it there, and then I'm going to scale horizontally to fill that in like that. And you'll notice the cup doesn't look any different over here. And that is because we've not yet added a material. So I'm going to close my UV editor, and we're going to start making the material now. So click on the material editor. I'm going to select one of these empty slots. And generally speaking, a cup's going to have kind of a waxy film on the outer side if it's a paper cup. So let's go to our finishes, and I happen to know there's candle wax down here under special. If I select that, this is our candle wax material assigned to selection, and it's going to make the cup look like a waxy candle, right? By default, it's going to be a whitish color. Nothing really impressive there. I'm going to come down to where it says base color and reflections. I'm going to click right here. I'm going to select bitmap. My image is already pre-selected there. Click open. And in this view, looks more or less right. I might actually make the cup a tiny bit taller because I may have shrunk it too far. When the light's just right, you see it's got kind of the right reflection for a waxy coating. But once we hit render, you're going to see it's wrong. So we can see our little logo there, but it's extremely faint. The reason why that is because on the wax preset, let's go up to the parent here, the base color and reflections is set down to 7. Then we have the subsurface scattering, which is set at 69. And both of these two values will affect how well this appears. Subsurface scattering, though, let's go ahead and drop that down to 0.1. By the way, all of these properties, if you hover over top of them, it will attempt to give you a tooltip to describe what's going on with that particular property when you change it. Personal experience, a lot of these are kind of oddly worded in a way that most people aren't going to know what it is until they actually play around with it to see what it does. But anyways, subsurface scattering, I set that to 1. I'm going to hit quick render again. And we see that our little logo is appearing more, but we don't get really much of a glare from the lighting that we'd expect from what we see there. Yeah. Okay, I didn't really like how the wax was going, so we're going to go a slightly different direction. I'm going to select finishes, and I'm going to scroll down to let's go with glossy plastic. And then I'm going to click right here. That's going to allow me to select a texture and add it to our material. So then I got, with this material assigned to the cup, we can see the texture is now showing there. If I click render, there is our cup. It's got a little bit of a sheen to it, but that works. So from there, just because we can, let's model something slightly different. So I'm going to close down the material editor. I'm going to come over to Krita. And I'm going to turn off my paper textures. So I just have the logo and the wonderful nutrition information. I'm going to click File, Save As, and we're going to save this as a PNG. Let's make that cup texture 2. Click Save. We want to have as little compression as possible. And click OK. And I'm not going to do any more changes in Krita, so I'm just going to close that down. And I'm going to turn off the cup temporarily. I'm going to go to Standard Primitives, Cylinder. I'm going to draw a cylinder right there. About like that. Height segments, I'm going to drop down to 1. And the height isn't quite right. Drop down a little more. There we go. So then with it like that, I'm going to go to the Edit Poly modifier. Polygon selection. I'm going to select both the top and the bottom. From there, I'm going to scroll down, find bevel. I'm going to click that. If I increase the height just a bit, decrease the outline a little bit, let's get this centered over here. I want to change this from group normals to local normals. There we go. Going to hit the plus button, drop the outline down a little bit more. Oops, that's the height. Plus button again. Raise the outline. A little too far. Right there, and I'm going to hit the checkbox. Yeah, all right. Polygon selection still selected. I'm going to go ahead and Drag across that, select all that, hold down Control, select all that. I'm going to scroll all the way down here to my smoothing groups. I'm just going to have them all added onto that, so it's now smooth there. Down to the bottom, going to select right there again. Going to find bevel. And I'm going to set my height to 0. Take my outline in a little bit. Hit the plus button. Oops, that's my outline. I don't want the outline. Drop my height down a bit. Hit the plus button. Bit more. Plus button. And exact values, I honestly couldn't tell you what they should be. I am just guessing on all of this. And I'm going to hit the checkbox there. So then once again, I'm going to do a selection group right across there. Hold down Control, select that. Rotate my camera so I can't see the bottom. Turn on occlusion again. Hold down Alt. Deselect all that. Rotate around. Deselect all that. And now that. So now I just got this bottom area selected. Huh. I missed some polygons there. Whoops. So Alt to deselect that. So now I've got that bottom area selected, and once again I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, and I'm just going to put them all as part of the same smoothing group, so I've now got a smoothed out bottom there. Coming up to the top, we're going to do something different. Selecting that polygon, so the height is going to be set to 0. Whoops, that's the outline. Height, 0. Outline, we're just going to drag it in just a little bit. Hit the plus button. And then we're going to set the outline to 0. Drag the height down a bit, not quite that far. I'm going to say that's about right there. Hit the plus sign. Set height to 0 temporarily. Bring the outline in a little bit. I'm going to bring the height up just a tiny bit. Hit plus. Bring the outline in just a little bit more. I think that's about right for that. And let's hit the checkbox. And now I want to deal with the smoothing groups again. So once again, I'm going to select all of that. I'm going to come over here, hold down Alt, going to deselect across like that. Make sure occlusion is set. Yep. Deselect. Oops. Deselect. Deselect. And deselect. For those of you who have not yet guessed what I'm doing here is I am making a subpar soda can. And I really wish I was exaggerating when I said it's subpar, but yeah, this is not going to be the best in the world. Grab this polygon right here, and I'm going to drag it up just a little bit more. So next up, I need my soda tab. And I think the line tool is probably going to be the best way to do that, but I'm not going to draw it directly over this, just simply because it'll make my life easier to not have to be looking at this underneath what I draw. Okay, so soda tab is a fairly simplistic shape. I'm going to click over here, then go to my line tool. Yeah. So we're looking at something that's going to go from here to right about here. So starting there. Just clicking and dragging. I'm going to click like that. Click yes. And that is a horrible shape at the moment, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the symmetry tool and pray it fixes my issue when I flip it. Oops, there we go. Doesn't quite fix it, but it is better. All right. I'm going to click Edit Poly. Zoom in here. Vertex selection. Select that vertex right there. I'm going to scroll down to soft selection. Check soft selection. Drop my fall off down considerably. And start dragging this up. Increase my fall off. Deselect soft selection and pull this one little piece right up there. So we're still missing the cutouts. Honestly, this probably would have just been simpler to do with a cylinder, but oh well. Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to kill the edit poly modifier and the symmetry modifier. I'm going to come back to the line tool. I'm going to click on segment, and I'm going to go ahead and add some segments here. So if I click create line, I can go like this, clicking right there, click and drag, click and drag, come over here, click, and then click to close that. Click yes. And now both of these lines are technically a part of the same spline. So then I'm going to do that again right here. Click. I'm going to go down on this part, up, over, round it over, click, click, and click. So then from there, I'm going to grab our vertex selection, and I already know this one's coming down right there, so I'm going to go ahead and pull it up. Let's pull, whoops. Let's pull that up. Grab this vertex right here, pull it up. Pull up. And let's go ahead and pull these up just because. All right. This is going to work funny. Let's see what happens. So let's go to symmetry. Where is symmetry? There it is, I'm blind. So Z is not what we want. Y is not what we want. X is what we want. Looks like a little Sad Among Us character. Okay. Let's grab our mirror plane. Drag it a little bit that way. And it looks even more sad now. Gonna go to Edit Poly. You know what, let's not go to Edit Poly. Let's go to Line right here. And I want to go ahead and pull this way a bit. Same for this. I want to pull that up in this direction. So now if I go to my symmetry, that's better. Now there's a bevel modifier, usually. So let's do Edit Poly. Let's find that bevel modifier. Second thought, let's just do it like this. Polygon selection, we're going to select those both of those halves. Going to bevel it up a bit. Hit plus, and let's round it off a bit. We're just rounding it off by giving it a couple of steps of bevel as we go in. A little too far there. And if I hit the checkbox right there, it doesn't have a bottom here. So I'm going to turn off polygon selection, and then I'm going to select cap holes. And it's got a bottom now, but it's a mess. So let's not do that, and instead rely on a different fun fact. But first, let's fix the shadow. There we go. So I'm going to move this thing into place. So there it is at the bottom of the can. Let's drag it up. I get this way. And that looks about the right spot right there. So, fun thing about modeling and animation, if you can't see a mistake, no one else can either. Um, that little hollowness to this piece right here, it's never going to be visible. We're never going to actually open this can. If you do end up in a situation where you need to be able to open the can, then you got to fix it. But for this particular point, we're not going to worry about it. Now we're going to go ahead and add another cylinder. So I'm going to zoom in right here, draw my cylinder right there. Doesn't have to be very tall, but I do need to move it up to the top so that it just peeks through the tab right there. And there's that part. Alright, so up next, let's go ahead and start the texturing process on this. Yeah. So I'm going to select this. I'm going to go to Edit Poly, Polygon Selection. I'm going to select across that band right there. Let's add in that band. I'm going to make sure occlusion is turned on. Yes, it is. We're still holding down Control. Whoops. I'm going to go to Select Only Tool so that way I don't accidentally move stuff again. Hold down Alt because I don't want that piece right there selected. And there's all that. So from there, let's scroll on down. Why am I scrolling down? That is entirely not what I wanted. I wanted to add an UVW map, cylindrical, fit. Then I'm going to hit a different button here. I'm going to hold down Control and then hit I. Well, nope, wait. First I'm going to go to Edit Poly, Polygon Selection, then hold down Control and hit I. And that's going to invert my selection to select everything that I didn't already have selected. Then I'm going to go to Unwrap UVW, open UV Editor, change it to LSCM, hit this middle button right there. Now the top and the bottom have been flattened. Turn on element selection, drag this over here, select both of these, and I'm just going to go ahead and select the texture we're going to be working with here, which is going to be this one right here. You notice how the background is black? That is because that is currently transparent. So let's scale down. Move it right over here. Yeah, realizing a minor flaw here. We'll run with it and see what we can do. Alright, so now edit poly. Nothing selected. Unwrap UVW. Open the editor. And element selection, select that. Got to turn our pattern back on. And I want you to notice we have these two polygons right over here that should be over here. Or if you'd rather look at it this way, we've got these three polygons here that should be over here. We can fix that. So I'm deselecting element selection. I'm going to box select those three right there. Then I'm going to right click on them and then select break. And what break does is it breaks it away from the rest of it so that I can just move it independently. I'm going to hit Control Z a couple of times. This is what it would have done if I had not hit break first. You can see it's stretching that polygon that's connected to it, series of polygons connected to it, in order to meet up with the object. So again, right click, click break, drag it all the way over here. I'm going to highlight all of that and then weld selected. So now that polygon is connected on that side. Turn element selection back on. Going to scale on the vertical again. Drag it up. I'm going to say that's about right there. And then close this. Up next, let's open up our material editor. I'm going to come down to this material right here. And now what we're going to do is we're going to select polished aluminum. And then we're going to click in this box right here, select bitmap, and select our texture. And I already assigned that particular material box to this object, but if you haven't, just click Assign a Selection, and you'll see your can now has your logo on there. So these couple of objects up on top here, I lost my cylinder somehow. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and assign this same selection there. And it turned red because I haven't mapped this yet, and it's just recognizing where it should be a little weirdly. So I'm going to go to Unwrap UVW, open UV Editor. I'm going to select the whole thing, scale it down. Oops. And just move it right about there. So now if I click the render button, our tab looks a little wonky. Missing little cylinder at the top is probably part of what's making it wonky. Also, the fact that it's actually inside the metal makes it kind of blur together. So we can fix that by selecting our Move tool Let's drag up just enough that we're going to start casting a shadow. Grab our scaling tool, shrink that back down. Let's move up just a little bit more. Then from there, we're going to go ahead and recreate our cylinder that somehow disappeared on me. And this piece is going to clip through both things. By the way, vocabulary term for everybody, clipping. That is when one mesh goes through another mesh when both are supposed to be solid geometry. You know what? Alright, so if that's selected, material assigned to selection, unwrap UVW, open UV editor. I'm just going to click that button right there to unfold it real quick. Selecting everything, scaling it down considerably. And we're just going to put it right there. Close the UV editor, click render. That's much better. A little bit of shadow really does have an impact. Alright, now of course I don't have the indentation drawn out right there. I'm going to say this is good enough for today. So at this point, let's zoom out a little bit. Going to turn my cup back on. I should start naming stuff. Alright, so this one's my cup. That is my can. These two objects right here on my pool tab. Oops. That's my tab pin. That's my pool tab. I'm going to take all the three of these objects right here, have them selected, and then I'm going to go up to Group, and then select Group. Probably should have named the group Can. Sorry. So now, if I select that group, when I grab the scaling tool, it'll scale all of them together. And say that looks about right for scaling. And let's go ahead and rotate this around this way just so we can see the logo a little bit better. And I want to go ahead and see my dice. No particular reason. I just want to. So I think my scaling is more or less okay. The die may be a little big. Let's click render. And this is what we currently have. Go ahead and let that finish rendering out. And I'm going to say I'm satisfied with how it turned out so far. All right. One more thing I'd like to do for the cup here. Let's make a straw. Straw is going to be really simple. So, new object. I'm going to select, let's go with tube. Tube? Yeah, let's go with tube. Come over here. Just let's go ahead and create it first and then play with the numbers later. So let's set our height. I'm going to drag our radius down. So we have two radius values here. Depending which number is the bigger value is going to determine which one's the outer radius. However, if you were doing this for an engineering class, radius 2 should be your outer radius, radius 1 should be your inner radius. So like that would be how you'd set the inner radius and the outer radius for the straw. It's looking a little thick still, so let's reduce it further. That's probably about right there. Gonna destroy that phone one of these days. All right. Up next, let's look at the height segments. Let's go ahead and increase that up a bit. 12 should be good. It's a little overkill for what I'm about to do, but it'll work. So then I'm going to go to Edit Poly, Vertex Selection, and I'm going to select all the vertices in between here and here. And I'm going to scale them closer together just by grabbing the y-axis and doing that. Now I'm going to move this upward. Right about there should work. And it occurs to me if I'm going to put it there, I should drag this one up just a little bit more. So now zooming in, I'm going to leave these vertices alone and leave these vertices alone. I'm going to select that row right there, hold Control, oops, select that row, that row, that row, and that row. So it's just every other one with the two outer sections not being selected. I'm going to grab my scaling tool right here, and then I'm just going to scale this out just a bit. Just like that. Maybe a little too far there. Probably right there. Deselect the scaling tool. We've got a little bit of ridge going on there. Up next, polygon selection. I'm going to select every other band like this. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom here and change my smoothing group to not the one that was selected. I'm going to do the same for the other sets of ones along this organ section here, accordion section. So it's not as smooth, but very clear what's going on there. It's an accordion section for a bendy straw. Up next, we're going to add a bend to it. So if I scroll up here, by the way, thin wall, you look inside, you see all the way down to the bottom, it's a tube. So let's add a bend modifier. And we have a few values here. Now, angle, if we do that, it's going to bend the entire straw and it's going to be kind of funky, right? So let's undo that real quick. Direction is going to determine what direction we're bending in. Bend axis is going to be determining how it bends the object. I'm going to go ahead and check limit effect. I'm going to add a bit of an angle. It's not going to be very clear why I did that to begin with. I'm going to come down here to where it says lower limit. I'm going to start dragging this number down. Down? It's not the lower limit I want, it's the upper limit I want. I'm going to drag it up. And as I drag it up, you're going to see the straw is starting to change its orientation a bit. It's a little hard to see where the limit currently is. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. So let's grab that real quick. Let's go ahead and turn off that. Set this back to 0. If I drag my center up instead and just put it right here above the lower vertices, click limit effect. Lower is going to go down that way. Upper is going to go up that way. So I want to drag the upper limit. Do you see that yellow line that's moving right here? I want that yellow line to be between this line right here and this line right here. So now only anything between these two yellow lines is going to be part of the bend effect. Everything else is just going to be this going straight out from that line, the lower limit going straight down from there. So if I increase my angle, my bendy straw is bent like that. Pretty easy. So I'm going to zoom out now. Position. And let's rotate the straw. Let's say that way. And lean it against a cup edge. I don't think I'm clipping through. I am just a little bit. There we go. Now I'm not clipping through. Let's grab a material. Let's just do a blank one. Let's go with, I know plastic is an option. There it is, glossy plastic. Material assigned to selection. And let's go with a whiter color here. Just very slightly off-white. So now when we render, soda can, 2 dice, a cup, and a sippy straw. All right. And that's going to be it for this video now. Um, in another video, I'm going to show you how to do a fluid emitter, so that way this cup will actually have something inside of it besides air. And that one is definitely going to be its own video.